All right, hello everyone. This is Dr. AnthonyChaffee. I'm here with a very special guest, Dr. John Jaquish, and he is an author, best-selling author, and inventor in the exercise physiology world. He has a book called "Weightlifting is a Waste of Time." He also has inventions that help support osteoporosis and actually can actually reverse osteoporosis to at least a certain extent. We'll talk more about that. And is the inventor of the X3 bar, which is band resistance training that, full disclosure, I actually have one myself and I've used it and actually really like it. So, Dr. Jaquish, thanks so much for coming on. How are you, sir?
Anthony, thanks for having me. Yeah, you call me John. Like, no, nobody calls me Dr. Jaquish.
Perfect. Yeah, please.
Also, my last name is really hard to pronounce, as we were just discussing. Yeah. So I don't want anyone to have to try and spell that or anything.
Yeah, sounds good.
Now, my website is just drj.com. That's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Like DOCDOR, the letter J.com. Just,
nice.
People will never get my last name right.
Yeah, probably easier. Yeah, mine too. I don't know. Like I was when I wrestled like in junior high and high school, like the announcers could never get the name Chaffee. They just could not figure it out. And so I'd wrestle 4, 5, 6 times in a meet, and they would pronounce my name differently every single damn time. And I remember once it didn't even start with like a CH name. It was just some large gibberish nonsense. And I was just like, well, it's kind of when I'm supposed to be up, and that seems like I'll just walk over to the mat and see. And like my coaches were there, so I'm like, yeah, I guess that's me. It's me, like Abernathy. I guess that's my name now.
Yeah, that's gotta be me. First name Anthony. Well,
yeah. So yeah,
good enough.
Yeah, and so that's great. So if for people that don't know who you are, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm a doctor of biomedical engineering. I started in life sciences because my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. I wanted to help her and developed a series of devices that would mimic like high impact forces. So high impact forces into the body, absorbed into the bone mass at very specific, actually impact ready positions. So for example, like this kind of position, for those not watching, like back of the hand in line with the clavicle, 120-degree angle between upper and lower arm. That's how, if you trip and fall, that's how you're going to protect basically your face from hitting the ground. And the body's very efficient at reacting in that way. We are 7 times stronger in the impact ready range of motion than we are in the weaker ranges of motion. However, we keep doing something really stupid. We keep lifting weights. If you're 7 times stronger in one part of the movement than you are in the other part of the movement, why the hell would you lift a static weight? That's dumb. Like, that's clearly not how the body works. And so I went to develop something that matched our biomechanics, or at least came close, because now what we're doing, just regular resistance training, it's the same weight on the bottom, where you have 1/7 the capacity of what you have at the top. So you basically pick a weight. When you go weightlifting, you pick a weight that you can handle in the weakest range of motion. And really, you're stimulating very little musculature, but you are damaging the joints chronically. And Peter Attia, Dr. Peter Attia, he's said this a number of times. He says, my problem with weightlifting is we overload joints and underload muscle. Yeah. I love it. I mean, he was sort of thinking the same way I was. And he said this while I was developing this. So like, wow, he and I are thinking right along the same line. And he's a really fit guy, but he does kind of focuses on endurance exercise, because he's like, weightlifting is just not it.
Yeah.
And I love that he made that comment, and made perfect sense to me because it was right in line with my research. So I compiled a bunch of research, pretty much everything on variable resistance, and determined not only the variable resistance wins against regular resistance training, hands down, every single time. There was one fraudulent study, and I believe it was malice that drove the study, where the variable resistance group, the control group was allowed to lift however much weight they lift in the gym. So whatever the relevant weight is, but the variable resistance people were only allowed to train with TheraBand, and which goes up to 14 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're only allowed to lift 14 pounds. And then, the conclusion, was that variable resistance wasn't good. Well, this, the whole test was rigged.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to get stronger from 15 pounds of force. You use more strength putting your shirt on in the morning. So yeah, I mean, it was just like a stupid study. But other than that one, which is fraudulent, 19 out of 19 studies find that variable resistance puts on muscle much faster, gets you stronger much faster, faster recovery, zero muscle soreness. Like it turns out like soreness is not lactic acid. You actually cannot feel lactic acid. Soreness is from micro tear damage, which is inversely related to growth. So the more damage you do to muscle, the less muscle you grow. So it's fatigue, not damage. So the whole idea that we need to get little tears in our muscle and then they grow back, better, false. That's not how it works at all. If you have damage, then you won't grow. If you don't have damage and you took the muscle to fatigue, then you do grow. And that's, another myth I wrestle with sometimes if I just decide to talk to confused people, which I spend some days doing. And usually it's just ignore these people. They're unwilling to learn anything. But we do live in clown world today. So there's a lot of people who are unwilling to listen or learn. Coincidentally, I think the internet's really run by a certain group that's very easily identified in the Dunning-Kruger study in 1999. You familiar with that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's my favorite study. You'll definitely bring it up at a cocktail party, I promise. Yeah. And what it really says is that the dumbest people think they're the most competent and smartest people.
Yeah.
I mean, that just explains the internet.
Yeah.
Like you see people making sweeping statements like this is the way things are, and they don't even know the definition of the words they're using, but they're not intelligent. Yeah. So what they don't know doesn't stop them because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas the smart, and here's the funny part, in the study, the smartest people thought they were a little above average. Mm-hmm. They didn't think they aced it.
Right.
They were, I did great, but I had, I was confused by a few different puzzles and questions and stuff like that. Yeah. And because the smart person knows what they don't know, therefore they question a lot of things.
Yeah.
Is this all the information? Have I even been given all the information to answer the question? Whereas the dumbass doesn't think about that. Yeah. They just, I know the answer to everything.
Yeah. Well, there's that, Tom Sowell, who you may, I don't know if you're familiar with him. I love Thomas Sowell. He's my favorite.
I think I've read everything he's written.
Yeah. He's brilliant.
Like one of my favorite people.
Yeah, same. And one of the things that he said that has always stuck with me was that it takes a lot of knowledge to understand just how ignorant we are. And unfortunately, a lot of these people, will never get there. And so they think that I just know everything. I'm just, I can see everything, all the pieces of the puzzle. And they only see a small piece of it, and it's, the old saying, small bit of information is a dangerous thing, and that's exactly what I think is being described there, is these people just think that they can see the whole puzzle and extrapolate from that the entire picture. And of course, that's very difficult to do. Socrates as well, he said that he was said to be the most wise man in the world, but he's like, how can I be the wise man? I don't know anything. I don't, like, why me? And he went around talking to all the most learned people that, like the study showed, these people thought very highly of themselves. And, he just started talking to them and asking them questions and realized these guys didn't know jack, but they also didn't know that they didn't know jack. And he at least knew that he didn't know jack. And so he was like, well, all right, I guess, and there.
Yeah, it's this is kind of a sidebar, but I've always tried to hang out with smart people because I can learn something from them, and not smart people that I might meet at some shitty dive bar or something like that. I'm just not really interested in talking to them. And so, yeah, I realize that I pretty much my social time is spent at private clubs. I joined all kinds of private clubs because I just don't want to. I just want the moron quotient to be lower. I don't want zero. I mean, that's impossible. But when maybe 50% of the people in the room are like actually have something interesting to say, like that's going to be a great night.
Yeah, definitely. And that was I think it was, oh, who was it? I mean, a comedian, Carlin. He said that, you think about it, the average IQ is 100. What does that mean? It's an average. So that means that definitionally, half the people that you meet in your life, day-to-day basis, are below average intelligence. It's like what that. It's like that's a pretty frightening thought. But I've certainly known people that aren't as intellectually gifted that still work hard and still recognize that they don't know certain things and try and don't try to act like it, and they actually become very, very successful and interesting people. They just they just work on it. And
somebody doesn't have to be a genius, but at least know that you don't know everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's very important.
I think like no matter who I say this to, no matter where they are in politics, I just think of the dumbass posts you see in politics in either direction. It's just like people are just saying outlandish, stupid shit. It's like, where the fuck did you get that? Like, I mean, now chances are they probably got it from CNN because CNN lies and nobody really checks. But that's like when somebody posts something like ludicrous, I'm like, did you get that from CNN?
Yeah. And well, and that there was a study out of Columbia. It was like 2015 or something like that came out, and they found that 52% of people who comment on some sort of internet post and talk knowledgeably, saying this, like, well, no, this is wrong and this is why. 52% of them have never clicked the link. And so they're just going off the headline, and they're just
the author of that study?
No.
Give me an app, it. Like, I'd love to reference that. Yeah, all the time.
I'll look it up for you. I don't have it off.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. I think everybody wants to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very
cool. Somebody will, like, the headline might lead you to believe that the study is about like how carbohydrates are good, but really the study's about how you don't want carbohydrates in your diet, and they'll just jump to a conclusion based on the title.
Yeah, or you read these sorts of things. I first sort of looked at that. Well, actually just reading the WHO studies when I was 13. I'm probably one of the few people who was fact checking the WHO when they were 13. But they came out with this outrageous claim that Cuba had a better healthcare system than America. I'm like, there's not a.
Well, I've seen that. Yeah. Oh, and anyone who's in Cuba that has a problem. They're out of that country. They're Canada. They're somewhere else that's trying to get right.
If they can, if they're able to.
Yeah, or they just die.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I was looking at it, I'm like, there is not a chance in hell that that's the case. But there was a lot of stuff, getting pushed out that Cuba was so great, communism so awesome. It's like, how is that possible? And this was 1993, and I was just like, the Berlin Wall just fell like 4 years ago, like, and we're already saying communism is better. Like, what? And so I ended up like finding the study from the WHO, and they ranked the Cuban healthcare system as one of the top 5 healthcare systems in the world, and they ranked the U.S. as like 76. It was way down the list.
Right, and it was some Marxist that wrote the article.
Well, the head of reportedly the head of the WHO, at least now, is an open Marxist. And so I don't know if it was then, but there's a political bent to these international institutions, and certainly with the WHO. And
and they're also getting paid off. Like, whoever wants Marxism.
Yeah.
And anyone with money wants Marxism, by the way, because it institutionalizes them as the bank.
Yeah.
Nobody realizes that. Like, why do all these rich people want Marxism? It must be good for everybody. No, they already made their money.
Yeah.
They want to be the lending institution. They know they're the only ones with money and nobody else has money. Somebody has to come to them when they want to start anything, start a business, build a house, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're a billionaire worth maybe 20 million minimum, like you're gonna be one of the new banks.
Yeah. Yeah. And and so this article, it was saying that we were way down the list, like 76, which I was just like too far. If you said that we were like 10th and Cuba was like 5th, I'd be like, I don't know, but I wouldn't have looked into it. But it
Yeah.
just really
It's just
overshot the mark.
egregious.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I looked it up, and like the study, this is 30 years ago. I looked at this, but from memory, it was something like they basically ranked countries by the actual medical care that they received and access to doctors and specialists and outcomes from all these different things, and things you actually consider worthwhile when considering a medical system. And then said, well, that's not fair though, because some countries are richer than other countries, and so you're working with what you have. So
They adjusted for wealth.
Yeah, by GDP. So so the U.S.
Talk about a worthless study.
Absolutely. So they
like, we're going to tell you exactly how it is, except we're going to adjust it based on some other metric that you didn't ask about.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't tell you about it either. The WHO, this is the first of 3 that I've seen that are exactly like this. They put in these little qualifiers that just make it complete bullshit. And so they divided it by GDP. So US actually had the number 1 medical outcomes and access to doctors and treatments for heart disease and cancer and diabetes and traumas and all these sorts of things. And but we also had the number 1 GDP. So our ratio was 1-to-1. And Cuba had a terrible healthcare system, terrible medical outcomes. But they also had they had a more worse GDP. And so they had a positive ratio. And so, that's knowingly trying to mislead people.
If you were raising money to like invest in Cuba and you use that data, you could be sued for investment fraud.
Good point.
Absolutely. I'm very familiar with I got tangled up with some dudes who got in trouble for that a long time ago, and they're like kind of first business sort of thing. And these guys were just defrauding people based on whatever information that was dubious or completely falsified if you really looked into it.
The WHO does a lot as well, and I found that if you see something on the WHO website and it has a link to the article right there, and it just sort of shows its work, it could be pretty much it's probably their conclusions are probably in line with it.
Right, but when you have trouble finding that study, there's a reason you have trouble finding it, because they don't want you to find it.
Exactly. And I've noticed that they did another one when I was in medical school where they ranked the US as 37th. And a lot of things came out, people saying, oh well, we spend the most per capita on healthcare in America, but we're only ranked 37th. We're not even getting our money's worth. And again, I was just like, I don't think so. I think that's bullshit. And so I looked at the study. Again, it had 5 criteria, one of which was anything actually worth knowing about, which was medical outcomes and access to doctors, access to MRIs and x-rays. And that was
the only variable that matters. Let's dilute that by 4 other variables.
And one of the other ones. And one of the others, all the others were sort of along these lines, but the one I remember in particular said, what percentage of the lower 20th percentile's medical bills do the upper 20th percentile pay for? And the answer to that, of course, is who gives a shit? Because what does that have to do with your mom dying of cancer or not? And so of course, the only relevant criteria, which is actual medical outcomes and access to care, we were again number 1. But they diluted it down, and they had these fudge factors to make it appear as if the US wasn't great. And then another one came out a few years later, ranked us 40th. And I just didn't even waste my time reading it because I knew it was garbage. But that's the thing, is that all these studies, I try to stress on people, have to read them yourself, have to read the studies yourself. Don't just read the conclusion. Certainly just don't read the headlines. When you're going through reading news reports or whatever, there's always going to be a catchy headline. But does the article actually support that headline and that conclusion? Quite often it doesn't. And it's really important to actually read the article. Yeah.
I just started a TikTok account, and I think half of my posts have been just like dispelling myths.
Yeah.
And one of them was like somebody posted or somebody published in the New England Journal. It was a Chinese study that got published in the New England Journal. So already I'm like,
yeah,
because that never happened up until like Biden became president.
Yeah.
Like, because we know how their medical system works, and we know how their academic system works, and neither reconcile with how we do things.
Yeah.
So don't really know how they pulled that off. Anyway, so they published this article that determined that intermittent fasting didn't do anything, and calorie restriction was the way to go. Now, anyone who's really read into this and compared the two studies, like, that's just not true. And there's a whole host of reasons, but when you know anything about intermittent fasting, like, the real benefits start at 18 hours. Well, they cut the fasting group at 16 hours. And on top of that, they were allowed to eat whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, eat just anything, 3 chocolate cakes, whatever. So they really weren't dieting, and they only, like, it's like they just had an early dinner, basically, is how they pull off this 16-hour fasting period, which is not real. It's like skipping breakfast. Like, you're not a hero for that. You're gonna do intermittent fasting. Let's try 72 hours. How about with no food or water?
Yeah.
Like, that will get you incredible results. Like, with the metabolic water that's leached out of fat cells, unbelievable the results you'll get out of that. But let's do that study. And coincidentally, when that study is done, and there was just one done with 5 days, no food, no water, these people all lost 15 pounds of body fat. This is after rehydration.
Oh, wow.
In 5 days. They're averaging 3 pounds fat loss per day.
Nice.
So, right. So, like, I just pointed out, this New England Journal study is not worth reading, because when the benefits start at 18 and they only did one for 16 hours, don't read it.
Yeah.
It's dumb. They didn't even need to do this study. We already knew that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, and also it's not really controlling for that either, because you're having these people eat different things. If you want to just control for the timing of it, and having that makes difference.
Right.
You have the same calories, same basic sort of input.
And that study's been done, and it came out much more positive for intermittent fasting. But as soon as you have like one group eating whatever they wanted, they didn't even control it. It's like, we don't know they had 2,000 calories or 4,000.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's not. Yeah, I agree. That's a bit of a ridiculous study. As far as fasting goes, I've certainly seen a lot of studies that show that fasting is very, very beneficial. And then there's also studies that look at, like, fasting mimicking diets, which is basically a ketogenic diet. You're just getting into that metabolic state, the so-called fasting metabolic state. And we spoke about this briefly off air. But I think we both sort of agree that the so-called fasting metabolic state, probably is our primary metabolic state, and we only call it and we only call it a fasting state because by the time we were able to look at our biochemistry at a molecular level, everyone was eating carbohydrates, and it's just said, oh, this is what it looks like when you eat.
Right, and you have to constantly eat carbohydrates.
Yeah, exactly, and so when you get out of that, things work much better, and then people get these large benefits from fasting. But I think a large part of that is going to be from just being in the correct metabolic state. Do you know of studies that, because most of the studies that I've seen are really just comparing fasting or a fasting mimicking diet just to a standard American diet. Are there studies that actually look at the difference of like fasting as compared to like a keto or a carnivore diet, like who both will be in the same metabolic state?
Not yet. No, like carnivore, like we just had the first like that where they actually use the word carnivore.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, I'm probably preaching some of the same stuff you've been talking about, but like previous studies. And there's one, don't remember the author, usually I'm pretty good at that. I just don't remember the author of this one.
Mhm.
It was an epidemiology study, and they found 1,000 people. Like this is the one that said meat and colorectal cancer, like you increase your
Right.
chances by 2%. When you read down the method section, you realize that these people ate nitrate meat,
Mhm.
not steak. They ate like a gas station hot dog.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
can't even buy nitrate meat in the grocery store anymore. So
yeah,
I think it's only like prison food and maybe what a gas station can get,
yeah,
because it keeps. That's what nitrates are for. It's preservatives. So people that ate nitrate meat every single day, 7 days a week for 40 years
yeah,
had a 2% greater chance of colorectal cancer.
yeah,
Okay. Now, were these people who were eating a gas station hot dog every day, were they doing it for their health?
yeah,
Probably not. If you know anyone who eats a gas station hot dog every day, is there a higher chance that they may have some other unhealthy habits,
yeah,
smoking, drinking, cocaine, heroin, meth?
yeah,
Like, I mean, the only people that I've ever seen order a gas station hot dog were living behind the dumpster next to the gas station, and
yeah,
they really liked meth.
yeah,
So, I mean, they didn't control for any of that.
yeah,
Nothing. So it was another one of these fraudulent studies. It was one of these studies that was created to mislead you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, like the bias is just like outrageous. Like,
yeah,
why on earth would you, like, you know exactly what kind of people you're dealing with. Like, this isn't a study. This
mm,
is a hit piece on the meat industry.
yeah,
And I tell all my fans, like, why you'll notice like the funding from a lot of like pro carbohydrate studies comes from some, like, nutrition institution, whatever, sounds really academic and governmental. Yeah, no, it's bullshit. These are all organizations that are owned by like Nabisco, General Mills. Like, they're just selling you the shit they make. They're telling you Doritos are good for you because they want you to buy more Doritos.
yeah, yeah. That's like,
Yeah, it's just, but
yeah,
I mean, we've had that kind of shit forever. Like, yeah, let's see, General Motors cars. Not that I have a problem with a company, General Motors, but like 300 awards from JD Power and Associates.
yeah,
You've heard that, right? Yeah, from like a Chevy, whatever, Chevy Cruze, and they have awards for like best 30-day satisfaction. It's a brand new car. If you're not
yeah,
happy in the first 30 days, like,
yeah,
that's probably a pretty shitty car. It's,
yeah.
I mean, they have to have an award for that. It turns out JD Power is a company that you can just go and buy an award from.
Oh,
Like,
really?
you pay them a fee and they'll just award you for whatever.
Oh, I should get a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, just fill up your
Yeah.
shelf.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I want one that just says I'm fucking handsome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most handsome guy in 2022,
Yeah.
Dr. J.
Yeah, it's the handsome
Um,
man in town. Yeah,
right. It just like it's companies do this.
yeah,
And the food industry is no different. The difference is it can hurt people.
right.
Whereas General Motors says, comes up with some weird metric to say their cars are great. And if you check one out and you like it, it's probably a great car,
Yeah,
but not because of the awards. So my point is, Nabisco and Kellogg's and General Mills and Dannon, all these companies that are buying research, they're doing it to sell their products. And they also know they want everybody to go vegan because they know vegans don't eat kale. Vegans eat cookies and cake that are just, like Oreo cookies. Oreo cookie sales are just through the roof. It's because of vegans.
yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. People don't know that Oreo cookies are vegan. It'll say on there, like vegan friendly, and it's like, are we trying to say that Oreo cookies are good for you? Like just the I'm sorry, there's some weird alarm going on here. Let me just sort of mute this nonsense. All right, I think that's over. I'll try to clip that out.
Hey, you're in Australia. Maybe somebody wasn't wearing their mask.
That could be, yeah, and they just have to get the snipers out. Certainly,
Yeah,
seems
got to kill them.
for. Yeah, just got to go. You're not going to conform. You got to be. Oh my God, yeah, they fooled me on that one. Hold on. They keep doing this where it's like it'll just go for a little bit and then it'll stop, and then I'm just hopefully that's actually it. But sorry about that.
Happens.
But, yeah. So I guess what was it? Where was I going with that? I sort of forgot.
We were talking about research being funded by snack food companies and how it's just so fraudulent.
Oh yeah, and the Oreos. Yeah, and then those articles that will come out every now and then. It says, oh, drinking 3 glasses of wine a night is better for your heart than an hour of cardio. I'm like, get lost. Like that's just.
I remember that. I remember that study, right? Yeah. And from one tiny metric of metabolic health, I think it was just like how much alcohol raises your heart rate versus like a light jog. And by the way, like I don't jog like that.
No. Yeah.
Like, my heart rate goes way up if I'm moving.
Yeah.
Like, so what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I remember that article. It was really popular in women's magazines. Like Elite Daily ran that shit like 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what people want to hear.
Yeah,
people want to hear that they can still have cookies and cake and have the body they want. And, it's like, that's great until you ask anyone who's in shape and they're going to be like, no, that's super not the way it works.
Yeah.
Well, all that food, just don't even view it as food. Like when somebody says like, you want a pizza, I'm like, oh, it's not food.
Yeah.
Like I won't eat that. It's just not.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's, people say it's like, obviously I do, carnivore sort of diet. People say, well, that's so restrictive. Like, I don't think so. I'm eating food. I'm eating, food that is designed for humans. I eat all the food that's designed for humans. And I don't eat poison. Like I don't think that's restrictive. I was like, are you restrictive by, you don't shoot heroin or do crack? Well, that's pretty restrictive,
Here's how I answer that question. I say like, once you realize what should be consumed by the human body, it's not restrictive at all.
Yeah.
In fact, you're eating the only thing that should be eaten by the human body.
Yeah.
Like everything else is just crap that you were marketed to.
Yeah.
Like it's just marketing. Like you don't want Doritos, you don't want, I don't know, where
Oreo cookies. Yeah.
Oreo cookies. Yeah. You don't want, like someone tried to hand me an Oreo, vegan. Like I was at like a party like a year ago. She hands me like a sleeve of Oreos and she's like, I know you want these. And she was kind of kidding, like she's vegan. I'm like, seriously.
Yeah.
Like I would, if I found that in my car, I would throw it away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's trash.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that you put that in your body, you're just going to fall apart.
Yeah. And it was true. And, people say that, well, even people that want to, do a vegan diet, it's vegan means just without meat, it's not even plant-based necessarily. That's vegetarian. Right. Vegan just means no animal products whatsoever, so, Oreo cookies are vegan. They're also vegetarian, crack cocaine. That's vegan. It's also vegetarian. It's plant-based, and so is heroin. So
heroin.
Yeah. So it's like, are we really saying that that rocks and heroin are the way to go here? It's just as long as it doesn't have animal products, then it's okay, or plant-based, then it's okay. But of course, there's so many things that we recognize, full well that are cause serious harm. And
so, I mean, neither of us really give vegans a hard time. We just promote meat as healthy food. But when you plant a field, what do you need to make the vegetables grow? You need manure from animals. You need bone meal, just ground up, bones from slaughtered cows. Yeah. Like those are the two things that they put in the soil before planting a field. Never mind the fact that they might have killed thousands or even hundreds of thousands of animals to build that field. And they have to continue to kill and poison animals that are coming into that field because the animals, it's still their habitat.
Yeah.
It's not like they got a map and they're like, you're not allowed here anymore.
Yeah.
Like they just go there. Birds go and try and eat corn and they get poisoned by the millions.
Yeah.
7 billion animals in the United States are destroyed every year for the sake of vegetable farming.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
If you took poultry, so if you combine pork, poultry, and beef, if you combine those three things, it's about equal. It's an equal amount of death. But 70% of the standard American diet is plant-based.
Yeah.
So even though it's 50-50 when it comes to killing animals, more of the calories are coming from plant-based. So they kind of like ignore that, like, oh, but if you take chicken out of the equation and you just look at beef and pork,
Yeah.
like the amount of death that plants create is insane.
Yeah.
And like, I think it was something like maybe like 5 million cattle per year would feed everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah. 500 pounds of muscle meat in each one of them.
Yeah. I mean,
like, that's a lot of food.
Yeah. That's a lot. Big cow,
Yeah, if I had my own, space, land, and I had bison running around on it, I mean, I'd eat like 1.5 animals per year.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, yes, but yeah, depending on the size. I mean, those things are massive bastards. And yeah, of course, chickens obviously are smaller, so you need more of them to go
kill more of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the very glaring difference between these two statistics is that the animals that we're killing to eat, we are actually eating them. Whereas the ones that we're just killing to get off our crops, they go to waste. And so
nobody sees them.
Yeah.
That's why, like, a vegan doesn't know that, and if they're told it, they put it out of their mind. Like, it's an achieved ignorance. Like, I'm going to ignore all of these facts. What did Joe Biden say? Like, we follow truth, not facts.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the president of the United States that said that.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Truth's not facts.
Awesome.
Doesn't truth come from facts? Pretty sure.
I would have said so, but he got elected.
Yeah.
So we're told.
Yeah.
81 million people voted for him.
That's quite a lot. Yeah, most ever.
Yeah, more than ever.
Yeah. And so you were talking earlier about you mentioned that people want to sort of do the same thing and then get different results. And we sort of touched on this before coming on air. But that's one of the things is that we have people that you've said that you've received very, very threatening messages when you just say, hey, like, if you want to lose weight and you want to get in better shape, just cut down on the carbs, or maybe just eliminate the carbs. And people get very, very upset by that. And the people that are,
I get death threats because of the carbs,
which is crazy. I mean, this is you're just a doctor and a scientist trying to put forward evidence to help people, and this somehow infuriates people when you're like,
by the way, by telling people to eat less carbohydrates and more protein, I make no money.
Yeah.
Not my business model at all. I'm just trying to help people out.
Yeah.
Like, this is just like I make nothing.
Yeah.
Like, people could just go and eat a Pizza Hut every day and use X3 and they get a protein minimum, and there'd be a bunch of muscular fat people. But instead, I try and tell them, like, well, if you want to be leaner. Now, there are some people who are like, I've been lean my whole life. I have a different kind of metabolism. I eat all kinds of shit, and it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on me. I also notice those are the same people who claim to have no appetite. Yeah. So it's like, they go and eat pizza, but they're also never hungry. So do they eat a lot of pizza? Obviously not. Yeah. But if somebody tells me that, it's like, it's not my problem. I'm like, if you get your protein minimum, 1 gram per pound of body weight, I guess if you don't tend to be addicted to these things, or if you take them out of your system and then put them back in, do you feel any inflammation? Some people say yes, some people say no. Hey, limiting carbohydrates doesn't necessarily mean eliminating them. And I even do have a protocol in the book that calls for some carbohydrates to stimulate hyperplasia.
Right.
So you get, a surge of muscle glycogen going into musculature after the workout. But even replacing the glycogen, by the way, replacing glycogen estimates up until recently were ridiculous. Like maybe for a large muscular person, maybe 20 grams of glucose is required.
Right.
Not, that's not even a Snickers bar, guys.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's how much muscle glycogen there is.
Yeah.
And so people say like, oh, I'm flat. I don't feel full muscles. It's like, but you're obese. So
Yeah.
how about you let the muscles take the back seat for now, or your perception of what your muscles are. And we were talking about this last night. A lot of guys, like, they feel like they're losing muscular size. Like, oh, it's because I'm losing all the glycogen out of my muscles. No, it's because you had intramuscular fat.
Yeah.
Which you're losing.
Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to be well marbled.
No.
When something eats you, you want to be the toughest piece of meat they've ever come across.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, don't get eaten.
Yeah.
But, that's not really a thing today.
Yeah. Well, if you get in the wild, also, like if you're just a bunch of lean muscle mass, you're gonna be harder to kill, and you're gonna be the one doing the killing more often. If you're overweight and have a lot of intramuscular fat, you're not going to be as dynamic and dangerous, out in the wild. It's just, that's sort of a survival thing as well. And, people forget that we feed carbohydrates and grains to cattle in order to fatten them up and put in intramuscular fat to get that marbling that we like as predators for taste. But, that is also in turn happening to us when we eat carbohydrates and grains. And that's what people don't understand. And that's, something that we spoke about last night, where I think that as from my athletic background and career, I always felt far better. No, I played high level rugby, both on carnivore and also on not on carnivore, just because I didn't know as much as I do now, so I didn't really notice when things sort of shifted off. So I know that you can get in remarkable shape by eating carbs and eating normal things. I never really ate all the processed crap and sugar, but I was almost entirely eating meat, but I would have a salad or some bread or whatever every now and then as well. But still, mostly meat based. And I was in very good shape and was very muscular and defined, and was able to perform very well. But I always performed far better. I was just like just a different human being when I was on carnivore. And when I talk to people about that, like with the bodybuilding community, they really go into they just slamming in as many calories as they can on as many carbohydrates.
They keep talking about calories. Like,
and
carbohydrates are not even a macronutrient. Like nothing in your body needs carbohydrates. There's, other than muscle glycogen, which, like I said, that's like a drop in the bucket. That's like nothing for carbohydrates. Other than that, which, by the way, your body will make if you don't have it. Probably not for hyperplasia purposes, because you need a rush of that. You need it like into the muscle so it stretches. It's like an actual mechanical stretching process to stimulate hyperplasia. But still, like, carbohydrates exist in nature to get mammals fat. Yeah. That's it. And for certain animal species, putting on body fat very quickly is advantageous. I mentioned this last night too. Bears give themselves type 2 diabetes every year. Now, type 2 diabetes is not a pathogen. It's the system of the body. I would say it's not a dysfunction. It's a function that we make a dysfunction by our behavior. Because what the bear does every year is they give themselves type 2 diabetes, and then they put on fat very quickly, which helps them survive the winter, because they just dig a hole and lay there for 3 or 4 months. You can't do that if you're lean, but if you're real fat, you can do that.
That's the thing. Like, with bodybuilding, they want to just pack in all these calories, and they think that equates to muscle growth. I don't think that there's any.
They just keep getting fat, and then they have to diet, and they're torturing themselves doing that, screwing up their metabolism, because they're also still doing caloric restriction. Which my biggest gripe against caloric restriction, it's like, yeah, it doesn't work for a period of time. And then you have a metabolic adaptation so that you can be at a deficit, and then you start putting on body fat again because your body is just deprioritized a couple of things like regenerating skin, regenerating digestive cells. So you go through less autophagy and use older dysfunctional cells. There's a question about cancer there too. You know, like people that never get into autophagy tend to be, I mean, this is a theory, but it's a theory that makes an awful lot of sense. So you're never renewing your cells when you're in this calorie negative, but also not losing body fat metabolic adaptation. And some people screw up their metabolisms for a long time. Like there was a study not that long ago on the people who had been on the show The Biggest Loser 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Their metabolism still doesn't work.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah.
They've had a metabolic rate so that even when they eat at a deficit, they're gaining body fat.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, I mean, like that's all you really need to know, like calorie deficit. And also the bodybuilding community loves to simplify things into like memes. Like all of their advice is going to come from a meme, like a sentence fragment, like 5 words.
Yeah.
And so they love calorie restriction, calories in, calories out. That's all that matters. Jesus, that is like so oversimplified. It's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one thing I was talking to Professor Ben Bickman from BYU about was that, and he's been studying insulin and its effects on humans for 15 plus years. And he was saying that, when your insulin's up, your metabolism just goes down. And so when you're not eating carbohydrates, your actual basal metabolic rate, you actually use like 300 to 400 more calories just running your system than you would otherwise. And so even if you wanted to argue the calories in, calories out thing, when you change your metabolic function, you're going to be using different amounts of calories just for your basic function. And like you say, you're not going to start recycling these cells because that takes energy, and you don't have the excess energy at the moment, and that can certainly keep these different genetic changes that could precipitate into cancer as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So when you have low energy, your body doesn't recycle cells, or it recycles less.
Yeah,
because there's always some metabolism of cells going on, far less. But if you eat 0 calories, can your body adjust to 0? No, it cannot. This is why I promote it intermittent fasting. Like your body won't adjust to 0. So you can fast hard, dry fast, like no water, no food, 72 hours, like 3 days, you'll lose 3 pounds of body fat a day for most people. I'm a little bit less because I'm already pretty lean, but I'm actually tomorrow, I'm coming off right now, it has been 48 hours since I've had any food or water. Okay. Do I seem foggy? Do I seem confused? No, I feel fucking great. Yeah. Yeah, but here's the thing, the body cannot adjust to 0. Okay. So when you're fasted, it has no choice. It's going after body fat. Right.
And then, so obviously this is something that you do. How often do you fast? How do you sort of work that into your schedule? What do you like?
Well, just to I wanted to come up with a protocol that people would follow, because, hey, the best diet in the world doesn't mean shit if nobody follows it. Yeah. So like, it's got to be like followable. So I've been running some experiments with myself based on some of the things I've read. I was trying to do like 1 meal a day at a deficit. So not a huge meal, reasonable meal, and then be fasted the rest of the time. I think my body perceived that as just calorie restriction, and I didn't really get as much benefit from the fasting because it was still on a 24-hour cycle. So I hit a metabolic wall. I had an adjustment. So I was eating very little and seeing almost no fat loss progress. And I even gained some body fat. And I kind of did that to see what that protocol would be like. That protocol worked for about 6 months. And then for another 3 months, I just got nothing. And so I was in the middle of a lot of traveling, and I didn't really have time to examine it. And then when I went back to re-examine what went wrong, should I just quote refeed and just go back to normal carnivore and then try and do this? Because I got to help people lose a lot of body fat. Like that's just part of the customer base. Like there's going to be overweight people, and got to help them. They may need the most help. These are the people that walk into the gym and trainers don't want to talk to them, don't even want them as clients because it's embarrassing standing next to an obese person. I'm not saying that that's my attitude. My attitude is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But that's how they're treated in gyms.
Yeah.
Overweight people are not welcome in gyms. In fact, CEO of one of the largest gym chains in the world told me, we have a policy to tell overweight people to go somewhere else because we want our place to be cool. We want a nightclub with treadmills, just good looking people.
That's absurd. Yeah.
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 Yeah, but that's the business. And I mean, this guy is not a bad guy. The guy told me this.
Yeah.
He's like, we're there to make money. Heavy people are bad for business. And I was just like, what? Those are the people that need the help.
Yeah.
The people who show up and they're already in great shape, like they're probably doing 10 other things. They don't need the gym.
No.
But that's just the way the world is. Like, you know, everybody with a business is trying to grow it. Now I'm fortunate, you're fortunate because we got a business that the better we do, the healthier people get.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's like, I wouldn't live a life with any other formula.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I come, and I don't have a great like bedside manner. I tell people like to shut the fuck up and do what they're told, because like there's a lot of research in this. A lot of people pined over it, and it's really important, and it's going to fix you. But I don't want your editorial. I don't want you to be like, well, yeah, but I need to have a pizza while I watch a football game.
Right. Yeah, you don't actually. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to eat at all. You're watching. Maybe you should pay more attention to the game.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. Like, I don't care what your excuse is. It's an excuse.
Yeah.
And I'm not accepting.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have to be like that.
Yeah. So now are you doing intermittent fasting, or you're doing a 72-hour fast at the moment?
Yeah. So my newer, what I'm doing is I'm building sort of levels. Like when you first, like this is meant for just the average person. Like the average person doesn't know anything about dieting. Maybe they've tried all the diets. Maybe they haven't tried any. Or, you know, they have a South Beach diet book that they found at a garage sale for a penny, which would be overpriced. But, you know, they buy the book and they read it, and, you know, they're like, okay, so, you know, I need high fat and high carbohydrates, and then I'll lose all the weight I want. So, whoa, pizza's good for me, you know, like that kind of thing.
Right.
You know, like they've had nothing but failure, which it's really easy to find people who have had nothing but failure when it comes to their nutrition. So I want to have, you know, different steps. Like you can't rearrange their life overnight unless they've had, like just coming off a heart attack or something like that. Those people are great listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, phenomenal. But they have to have that moment, which sucks. I'd rather catch people beforehand.
Yeah.
So to catch people beforehand, what I'm trying to do is just come up with like different recommendations, where the first one is just cut out all processed foods. Just anything with a package, like unless it grew on a tree, or, you know, it would run away if you stabbed it in the ass.
Yeah.
Those are the only two things you should be eating.
Yeah.
Anything else, it's not food. And so people are like, okay, like I can still eat like apples because I like apples. Sure. Still have that stuff, way better than the stuff in the packages. So that's level one. And then, you know, level two, you might do some 1 meal a day kind of things. And then the problem with fasting is that for it to really be effective, you got to go all the way.
Okay.
And, you know, when you do multi-days, and especially dry,
okay,
like, because when you're dry fasted, you're pulling metabolic water out of fat cells. Fat cells are only 10% water.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you start to dry fast is, you know, you feel like thirsty and hungry and a little weak. And then all of a sudden, and you'll know the moment, all of a sudden when that first fat cell bursts, and you've got all that, you know, like, I mean, you would just see your, you know, your triglycerides would be low, everything would be low. And you'd see your LDL go way the fuck up. By the way, the highest LDLs recorded are from people who are fasting.
Okay.
So that's like saying LDL is bad is like saying losing body fat is bad for you.
Yeah.
We know the opposite to be true. So
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
like, I don't,
Yeah.
like, I wish I had been around 20 years ago when LDLs were vilified. It's just like, but that's how we lose body fat. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's not the culprit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, your LDL skyrocket and you get energy and focus because it's faster than just ketone bodies. Like you're actually destroying fat cells, which, by the way, caloric restriction can never do. It just shrinks fat cells and then expands them when you start eating again. You're actually destroying them in dry fasting.
Yeah. Is that only dry fasting, or is that can you do that with wet fasting? Or does it have to be sort of a state of sort of mild dehydration to go along with it?
As far as we know,
Yeah. Okay.
because it's your body's. So I haven't had any liquid. And I'll send you the study after. There's 2 studies, which they're great, where people went 5 days, no food, no water. And even if you're not a scientific person, I encourage you to read these studies and try and understand them, because it's kind of hilarious that, it goes so far against what we've been told. You need 8 glasses of water a day. You know where that came from? Gatorade. That's where, yeah. Gatorade came up with that. And of course, the bottled water companies just jumped on that horse and rode it right into the ground. Like, yeah, you need 8 glasses of water a day. Yeah, no study ever found that. In fact, the only thing that's ever been studied about hydration was in 1943. That's how interested the medical community is in hydration.
Yeah.
Though they probably should consult with some anesthesiologists, because they have some strong feelings on this. You do not want to do anesthesiology on a dehydrated person. However, the dehydration is quick, because what happens is you get dehydrated and then you start tapping metabolic water. You're not dehydrated anymore.
Right.
So in this study, the people that were on the 5th day of no food, no water, they were urinating the same amount of urine.
Okay.
As day 1.
Yeah.
Where'd the water come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How is your body still? So even though you are, quote, a little dehydrated, but you're not like, if you do this, sometimes you just like, reach to scratch the back of your head and your bicep just knots right up, like when you're that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Never happens. So you're hydrated enough where you don't get any cramping or anything like that. No headaches. And you're fine. And you still produce the same amount of urine. And of course, like, at some point you're like a couple of days in, you're like, where is it coming from? It's coming from the metabolic water.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like,
awesome.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I've never tried dry fasting. It would be interesting to sort of check it out. I've noticed in patients that just fasting in general, might accelerate things a bit if they're really looking for rapid weight loss. But one of the nice things about carnivore diet is you don't have to. I think that your body can sort of regulate this as well, and you will automatically go into, you can call it a caloric deficit if you want to, but your body is just telling you don't need as much food if you're just eating carnivore. And
right, when you eat carnivore, you actually feel full.
Yeah.
You eat like a steak, and and I did do a little over a year 100% carnivore. Like I didn't have anything. Like I wouldn't even chew sugar-free gum. Actually, I'd never chew sugar-free gum. It's got a chemical shitstorm. But I mean, it just like zero went in me except for animal protein and water.
Yeah.
And I felt dynamite. I did get a little bit of pushback when I told people they should really do exactly what I'm doing. And man, there were some people that were like, I just can't. And I tell them things like, if you use the word can't, you need to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be one of those can't people?
Yeah.
Well, like put it back on them, like, saying like, hey, you want to wear the shirt that says a fucking loser?
Yeah.
No, you don't. So don't be a fucking loser and just try it. Because if you try it, it's really not that tough.
Yeah. Was
and I feel the same way about fasting. But I think part of, like, how about this? Like physicians have trouble with compliance when they just prescribe a pill.
Yeah.
People forget, or they're lazy, or they lose their bottle, or they get it confused with their pet's medication. So they just fuck it, throw all the pills away.
Yeah.
So osteoporosis was what got me in the life sciences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Half of the reason the British government was helpful when like it was hosted clinical trials that happened at the University of East London and the Stratford Village Surgery. Why was the NHS, the government, the British government, so, I mean, they went way out of their way to be helpful to me. And I was like, man, this is a huge bureaucracy. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why would they be so helpful? And finally, I met up with one of the top researchers in the country on osteoporosis. And he said, our biggest problem is compliance.
Right.
People go and use your medical device, but they won't remember to take a pill.
Right.
He says, we don't know what to do. Like at this point, bisphosphonate drugs are, the patents have all run out. So there's, they're cheap.
Yeah.
People won't take them. They don't, and they also feel awful after they take them, so they put it off, and that's how it like starts. Because there's a lot of side effects of those, but they come and use the osteogenic loading equipment, no problem, love it. They feel great, they feel energized after they do it, which I'm sure is no surprise to you.
Yeah.
But it's a surprise to them because most of these people have never exercised a day in their life, and they also have metabolic dysfunction, and they come and they actually do a real exercise intervention. It's more just like bone compression. I mean, the movement is like from here to here, like millimeters of movement of the body, but tremendous forces, thousands of pounds loaded through the body. And, all in an effort of bone compression to stimulate the bone matrix, to pull in minerals, to recalcify, make the bone more powerful. That's like people love doing it. And that's why they were so accommodating. Like people want to do your thing. They don't want to do our thing.
Right.
And that's why they're helpful.
Yeah.
Kind of cool because, you kind of wonder, like, is there a big conspiracy? Or the pharma company's going to pay the institutions to bury my technology? Hell no.
Yeah.
Like the medical community actually does want to help people.
No, that's good. Yeah. And it's you have to sort of wonder if there's a large government bureaucracy that's actually helping you. Like, oh, am I on the wrong side of this?
I would say, like, I mean, in our more recent times, I would say our governments are not on our side when it comes to health. They're doing favors for their donors and whatever else. Like, we probably can't get into the weeds on that one, but there's a lot of complications revolving around some medications that we're just not even allowed to discuss.
Yeah. Well,
if you're not allowed to discuss it, there's something being hidden from you.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah. If you have to shut down the conversation, obviously,
there's massive deception going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't even discuss it. There was Ivor Guyver, who's a Nobel Prize winner for his work on superconductors. And he actually gave up his seat on the American Physical Society, and because they were saying they came out very dogmatically about something. He said, "This is settled science. We will broach no discussion on this." And he just said, and it's not, this was a previous no touch issue, and he said that,
like statins 20 years ago.
Well, like statins, but more to do with the environment and climate change and things like that. They basically said the Physical Society said, this is settled science, and that anthropogenic climate change is what it said it is, and there's no nuance, there's no discussion at all that to be had. This is it.
That's not science.
No, exactly, and so
science is questioning everything.
Exactly,
at all times.
Yeah, and so he just gave up his seat on the Physical Society, and he said that this is a society that still to this day argues over the weight of a proton, and yet you're not allowed to even discuss this other thing. That's ridiculous. If you can argue on the weight of a proton and be like, no, that's bullshit, then you can argue about anything. So
you ever been to one of their parties?
The Physical Society? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't, not personally.
Yeah, me neither. It sounds like a terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. Like, weight of a proton. Let me get my notepad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I bet the bartenders at their parties are like, oh man, I've got the worst headache from hearing these people.
yeah. Yeah, probably. So you were doing a carnivore diet for a while, and obviously, when you're working with people, you're trying to just find a good fit for them. But what do
Something
you?
that we can plan on. It's just
Yeah,
compliance. Like,
yeah, exactly.
and I do know there are people that will go 100% carnivore, and I will. I mean, like when I redo all my nutrition recommendations, that's going to be an option that I'm going to promote heavily. But I'd say 10% of the people are willing to even listen to that, and then the other 90%. It's sad because they're really it's really their self-doubt. It's not like they think it's not safe or something like that. They might say that,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of doubt. Like they like eating, and they're like,
yeah,
God, going days without eating, how would I do that?
yeah,
Well, when you're not carbohydrate addicted, you don't think about eating. You talk about fasting to the average carnivore, and they're like, yeah, I could probably go a couple days with no food.
yeah,
Cool, try that. Yeah, like when you try it, no sweat. But when somebody who eats a lot of carbohydrates tries it, a fucking misery.
yeah,
Absolute misery. Especially like the first 12 hours.
yeah. Well, that was the thing too. It's like you were saying that like one of the most heavily searched for phrases is how to lose weight without changing my diet. It's like, well, how
Right.
the hell do you think you're going to do that?
Yeah,
And
anyone who would search for that is crazy. Like your diet is why you're fat. Like
yeah,
if you're overweight, that's why. It's what you've been putting in your mouth.
yeah.
And to think that there's some way where you wouldn't change that is
Yeah.
insane.
Well, it's like looking up, how to, beat cocaine addiction without stopping cocaine use,
There we go.
and so,
Turns out sugar is more addictive than cocaine. There's a
yeah,
great study on that. Yeah.
yeah. I saw one Dr. Lustig from UCSF put out where they're looking at MRIs and, you hit a dopamine hit surge to the addiction centers of your brain. And there's a study using MRIs, and you would give like a amphetamine dose to people, and they had control groups. So like you or I who wouldn't consume any of these sorts of things. Those areas would light up, and then someone who was addicted to methamphetamines, who had killed off a lot of these parts of their brain, had this sort of barely twinkle in the same areas. But then people who were metabolically unwell, who were sugar addicted, they had the same barely twinkle. So it was addictive in the same way as cocaine, heroin, or methamphetamines, and it killed the same areas of the brain as methamphetamines to the same extent as methamphetamines, which is absolutely terrifying. There was it's like a medical director in Amsterdam of all places, and he said that sugar was the worst drug on earth. This is people with the red light district who probably know a few things about drugs, and he's saying this is the worst drug on earth. I would probably agree with that. Just for the fact that it's in everything and we don't realize it's as bad as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was you mentioned there was another study looking at fructose and cocaine, things like that. Was that a different study?
We may be referencing the same thing. I listened. So I lived in the People's Republic of San Francisco for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I got to see Lustig a couple times.
Nice. Yeah. No, he's a good
the guy's just like a treasure to society. Yeah. I don't think he'll be appreciated. I feel like maybe in 20 years, veganism will be in the same category as anorexia and bulimia. It's just, instead of like anorexics and bulimics, they think they're healthy too.
Right.
Like, I like to point that out to people. So when they're like, oh, that's outrageous, you would say that. Talk to a bulimic. They think they're the healthiest people. And, like, just because their problem is their view of themselves in the mirror, whereas I think a vegan's problem is they surround themselves with other people who fit into their subculture, which just becomes kind of an information echo chamber. When subject probably of a book I'll write years from now on subcultures. Like people really, you notice how like you see like a teenager and all of a sudden they become like emo.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so they dress like their depressed friends. They all get the same haircuts. They all use the same, fuck, I don't know, just everything. They're up each other's asses. They're just like clones of each other.
Mm-hmm.
People really like being part of a subculture, you know, and when you see these, you know, overweight purple hair ladies at the grocery store who are like bitching about everything, you know, I need to see a manager sort of thing. And, you know, like, I don't think that guy should be allowed to park in the parking lot that has a Trump sticker on the back of his car. You know, like, okay, lady, you know, like that, like it's a subculture. They fall into it and they do every little thing the same. And it makes me think that there's some desire for a majority of the population. I think it's the lower intelligence part of the population, to save them from having to think about things. They join a subculture. Then they don't have anything to think about at all. They just do. You know, like when you join a biker gang, pretty much the only t-shirt you're going to own is going to say Harley Davidson on it.
Yeah.
Right. Or your gang name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, so you don't have to worry about shirts anymore. You don't have to worry about what your transportation is, because there's always going to be some bike. You know, like they do that so they can just go, fuck everything else. I'm just following these guys, and whatever collective decision we make, you know, whether it's to do, you know, be vegan or eat meat or all get the vaccine or what, you know, it's like, we're all going to be the same.
Yeah.
So no thinking.
Yeah.
And in now with social media, it's almost like that echo chamber is amplified, because social media doesn't have us connect with people with differing opinions. Typically, it connects us with people that have the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I have conservative friends that are like, I don't see all this like Twitter outrage over like just today. Like, I don't see it. Like, nobody seems angry about this. And I'm like, you don't have a single liberal friend.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like, you designed it so that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, I know who this guy's, you know, Facebook friends are and Instagram friends are, and they're all his, you know, NRA buddies. Yeah. So, okay, well, yeah, you do you. Like, you have no idea what people are saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. You sort of sit in your own bubble, and you don't get outside of that. There was a story about that. There was like someone from, you know, his New York society, like New York Times sort of things. And, you know, there was some election at some point, and the other people that they were going against were, you know, personally were rooting against, ended up winning like massive, or maybe it was like Reagan or something like that. You know, we had this landslide, you know, 48 states. And they just said, how could he possibly have won? I don't know anyone who voted for him. It's like,
yeah, I'm sure you don't.
Yeah. And but that shows just how isolated people can become, and that, you know, that was before social media as well.
Before social media, it's worse now.
Yeah,
way worse now.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I was going to say, so what do you do now? Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I actually had a question for you.
Yeah,
and you know, like, different guys who promote carnivore just have different answers to this question, but is there ever a point where you get to where you think carnivore has just, like, you need a break from it? Like, as I hear that, like, people say, oh, keto only works for a certain period of time. I'll say, well, I don't know about that. I haven't seen that study, but I know calorie restriction only works for a certain period of time because you have a metabolic adaptation. Ketosis is a system of the body.
Yeah.
And, like, I've never heard about it failing over a period of time for any particular reason. And I haven't been able to find the research. I just get the question a lot, and I think it's just some vegan bullshit that somebody made up.
Yeah.
Does this ever happen to you? Like, I was 100% carnivore for a whole year. Never, I mean, I was the leanest I've ever been. I'm stronger now, but, you know, I was stronger than I had ever been.
Yeah.
up to that point. So I'm just curious, like do you find anything with that?
No, for me, no. I mean, I've been doing this solidly for 5 years. I was doing it solidly for 5 years in, early 20s. And I've just never, ever felt better in my entire life. I've never had an issue with that. I think, seeing something that, Professor Bart K, he was talking about sort of this evolution of different sort of carnivore gurus or influencers or whatever doctors who are now saying that actually you can't survive without carbohydrates. You have to intake carbohydrates, which we know from biochemistry background, and they shouldn't really know because they've taken biochemistry. You don't need that. You will make all the carbohydrates and so forth that you need. But they were having problems after about a year, and they were having hormonal issues and electrolyte issues and whatever. And they decided, because they looked at a small sort of mechanistic study, saying, oh, look, there's this little pathway and response in your kidneys, and this has something to do with your microtubules and resorbing electrolytes, and that's what it is. I don't have enough carbohydrates. Well, first of all, you have carbohydrates. Your blood sugar is where it's supposed to be, and you have glycogen. And so if you needed carbohydrates to do to make this function properly, it's already there. But they were saying that must be it, and so they started incorporating sugar, actually.
Fruit or whatever.
Yeah, just drinking orange juice and eating honey and fruit, and that was something that they thought was good for them, forgetting to realize that there are people like myself, like Dr. Baker, like countless other people who have not only been doing this for several years, but several decades, and then entire populations who have been doing this generationally, and they have never in their life consumed carbohydrates, some of these people. And that's something that's well recognized by various scientific and medical institutions, saying that the requirement of carbohydrates, a lifelong requirement for carbohydrates, is zero. That is a well-established fact. And so,
still in the nutrition guide printed by the AMA.
Yeah, and
still there.
Yeah, and so them sort of, so they were doing something differently, obviously. If you're having problems after a year or so that I'm not having, or you weren't having, or Baker wasn't having, or the Inuits never have, well, obviously there's something different going on there. They thought that this was lack of carbohydrates, but we were all lacking carbohydrates, and we were thriving, and he wasn't. So it's something else. It's not the carbohydrates. Maybe they feel better on carbohydrates, but that's going to be an aside. That's not addressing the underlying issues. So no, I don't. Just looking, anthropological data and the fossil record and biologically, I think all the best evidence shows that we really are carnivores as a species. The type of animal that we are biologically is carnivore. And so, eating meat your entire life is not going to cause detriment by definition, because that being our evolved diet, if that is our evolved diet, and I think that evidence strongly supports that. You cannot live generationally in that state without carbohydrates if that's not going to be optimal. If lack of exogenous carbohydrates are going to cause hormonal dysfunction or electrolyte dysfunction, you're going to know about it. And so, if you have the Inuit, and I like using the
it'll also be universal. It'll happen to everybody.
Yeah. And
this is, let me just take one little sidetrack here. The whole everyone is different, find out what's right for you. That's some bullshit that somebody came us marketing.
Yeah.
It's that's excusing the person who just won't, take whatever, or it gives them heartburn or something like that. Everyone is not fucking different. We all have one heart. We have the same skin. It functions the same. It's not like, somebody's skin, they absorb water through it.
Yeah.
It's another thing I saw recently. If you bathe too much, you absorb water through your skin. Oh, really? Pretty sure it's a one-way street and it's out, not in.
And yeah,
It's just like, I
lipid
mean,
soluble shit to go through your skin, first of all, you know?
right. Like
Yeah,
you get chlorine poisoning every time you went swimming. The
yeah,
fuck?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So those are waffle words that were developed by pharmaceutical companies so that, they didn't have to call you a bitch if you didn't want to take their medication.
mhm,
If you didn't like the side effects, it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't right for you.
yeah,
And, because we treat everybody like they're a child in healthcare.
yeah,
But assuming they're stupid as a child too, which is, I
yeah,
think, a large problem with healthcare. It's like no one wants to be educated; they just want to be told what to do. Yeah, bullshit. A lot of people do want to be educated.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of, it's very condescending, it's just, oh, they just don't understand. They just don't want, it's like, how the hell do you know that?
Dude,
You know?
there's a video out there. I mean, I copied it. I actually did a screen record. Like that's how excited I was.
Yeah.
Bill Maher, who is somebody I normally don't really care for,
Yeah.
was talking about how misled some people are by some of the medical information that's out there. And he's like, when I think about the medical community, the arrogance of don't question us, we're going to tell you what to do. And he says, well, here's the problem. This is me to the medical community. This is him talking to the medical community. He says, you're wrong a lot,
Yeah.
like a lot.
Yeah.
And there are drugs that get approved by the FDA and then pulled by the FDA.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to even ask what percentage gets pulled.
Yeah.
There's some groups that estimate it's something like 75% of drugs that have been cleared,
Oh, wow.
been approved, have then later been where's Seldane? That was when we were kids. That was like the allergy medication. Well, it causes arrhythmia. So, it just quietly disappeared.
Right.
But, there's only a press release when they launch a new drug, not when it disappears.
Yeah.
So, right. So he's talking about the irritation that the medical community has with the population when the population starts asking questions.
Mhm.
Like, why would I need to take a vaccine that doesn't stop people from getting it and doesn't stop me from spreading it?
Yeah.
Like that question.
Yeah.
That's apparently inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's completely appropriate. Why would I take something that has a risk of death, that the two things that we care about it doesn't do either of those things?
Yeah. And or you don't have long-term safety data. I mean, the thing is not being allowed to ask
or
questions.
that which we're supposed to be promised via FDA approval, but apparently they can just say it's going to be rush status, so we're not just going to do any of those studies at all.
Yeah. And I mean, you should always ask questions. You may, I mean, it may be, people may think that's unreasonable, but it's not unreasonable. This is your life. You only have one of them. You don't get a reset button. You can't go back and just say, oh, well, if I had to do it again, I would do X. Well, you don't have that option. So you do need to think critically about things, and you do need to ask questions. And I think that, that's important for people to do that. And I hope that they continue to do that. Just going back to your point about, everyone being different and how sort of absurd that is. I totally agree with that. I talk to people about this, and I start making, my arguments, and they try to sort of go one way or the other. And I said, well, everyone's different. Everyone has a different whatever. And I'm like, no, we're one species. We're the same animal. We're hyper, evolving.
Yeah.
We're not even Homo
Pour
sapiens.
acid on me, pour acid on you, same result.
Yeah, we're Homo sapiens. Like, we are very, very, closely genetically linked. We've been essentially the same for about 300,000 years genetically. There's been minor adaptations here and there, but as far from just an overall animal perspective, we're the same, and we've been the same for hundreds of thousands of years. And so, they'll just not think about it, but just be, oh, no, because, these things just get repeated and repeated and repeated. And so they think that it has some sort of merit, where in fact, most of these things, it just came, like, multiple examples that you've said, is like, of where these things came from. They came from complete, nonsense or just marketing. And, my argument back to them.
Who said you say a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth?
Yeah, Hitler.
Well, no, it's Frederick Goebbels, who was
Oh yeah,
Hitler's
well, he's Hitler's
propaganda guy.
propagandist. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just like
Well, the Nazis anyway.
that is
Yeah,
applied by, governments all over the world. They just
yeah,
keep the lie going, and then people just start to believe it.
yeah. Make the lie, make it big, and keep repeating it until people believe it. And then the other one was accuse your enemy of what you're doing, so that when they say, "Oh, actually, you're doing it," you just say that's retaliation. That's people project all the time. But yeah, so my response when people say that, no, everyone's just different, blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, will you point out to me one example in nature where you have two members of the same species who have different optimal diets? I'll wait. I've yet to have someone answer that.
That's a great question. I love that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sort of boils it down, because like this doesn't, it wouldn't make sense biologically, especially something so drastically different from being carnivore to being vegan or vegetarian. How is that? Most animals.
So different.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can, there's plenty of instances where herbivores eat meat. They'll eat like small animals that run by and do just fine. And we can that has all the
gorillas eat monkeys.
yeah, chimpanzees, as well, and
chimps. It's chimps that it'll eat smaller monkeys.
They'll eat more. Yeah, they'll eat more than that. And funny enough, there's a National Geographic picture of like chimps in certain areas, like hunting with spears. It's like, oh, dude, like Planet of the Apes is on its way, and which is pretty funny. Yeah, and so you can you don't actually need to be especially adapted to eat meat, because meat has all the nutrients that we're trying to make. What are we trying to do when we eat? We're trying to build and maintain meat. So what has all the nutrients that we need? Meat. You have to be specially adapted to get those same nutrients from plants, which is very hard to do. You have to be able to break down cellulose first and foremost if you're eating fibrous plants. And that's not really something that that you're going to see, in sort of in a lot of people. So you have one species. When I say to people, like, the Inuits live as carnivores, and there's no question of that. These people live up in the North Pole. There are no plants to eat. There is no honey to eat. There is no fruit to eat. So if these were required essential ingredients to life, they would be dead.
They die.
Exactly. And then going through the ice ages, which we've done 5 times in the last few million years. A lot of the world was covered in ice and glaciers. There were no plants to eat. The majority of people did not have access to plants, and this is thought to be why we actually went full carnivore, because we didn't have the ability to eat any plants at that point, and we're already eating animals.
Well, also, so I got something I want to add to that. Like, in nature, like how many vegetables and fruits do you just trip over? Like, right. The vegetables and fruits that we have are genetically engineered to be cheap food. And like, I'll just like, when some of these idiots arguing with me, I just post a picture of Yosemite and I'm like, point to all the vegetables. Like that is something you would see, 1,000 years ago. Just a valley with trees and shit, lakes, rivers. Where are all the vegetables?
Yeah.
Fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Vegetables were engineered.
Yeah.
I mean, like, before corn became cultivated, it was just like unheard of.
Yeah.
It had to be. And then like there's Baker's joke. It's like, I've never seen a cave painting of a farm with vegetables on it.
Yeah.
Or somebody making salad. A lot of cave paintings of hunting, though.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, they hunted. That's all they did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and well, that's what people say. We were hunter-gatherers. I'm like, drop the gatherers part. But when we had to, sure. And you look at different historical records of Western cultures going into Australia or North America. They marveled at how they just lived as carnivores. They only ate meat, and they were saying, they're like, even in the northern reaches in what's now Canada, there was I was reading excerpts from like a journal, whatever, that some guy wrote at the time, like in the early 1500s. And he was saying that, people were just eating meat, and he was just like, that's pretty crazy, but they were extremely healthy, extremely fit. They looked just physically beautiful. They were just like statuesque. And he said that it was just a bit crazy. He said he understood it for the people, more north, where it's just living in the permafrost all the time. You got to do what you got to do. But he said people more, in the southern sort of New England areas, 3 months out of the year, you had it defrosted, and they said that surely they could live off the bounty of the land during those 3 months. He said, but they don't. They just ate meat. And there's a lot of records, there and in Australia, where people were, again, just blown away by this. And they all said that, when in times of, starvation, they knew which plants they could eat to survive on, and that they could, use medicinally. But when they didn't need them, when they had meat available, they didn't touch it. They just tossed them away. And so people look at, it's like, oh, well, the Native Americans or Native Australians, they ate this, and they ate this, and they ate this, and they ate this, and they would make a broth out of this, and a tea out of that, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, when did they do it? How often did they do it? Was that a daily occurrence? No, that was when they were starving to death, or when they were using it medicinally. And that is what all the original source data shows. There was, every time I find one of these books from like an explorer who's written about their travels, one of these areas, I always pick it up, and I always look through it. And
you should write that up and reference it.
Yeah,
great for people to read.
Yeah, well, I can probably put them up there. I have some of the books. There's one in particular that I didn't buy the book. I should have. I will probably, but I just took pictures of all the pages so I could like read it later. It's a whole chapter just on the diet of the Native Australians, and they were just marveling how they just only ate meat. And most
I'm sure you've seen the documentary by Pete Evans.
Is that the Magic Pill?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He goes through the Aboriginal tribes and interviews them. Like, they got all kinds of problems. Like, they're all sick, and then he puts them on an all meat diet, and everything goes away. That's weird.
Yeah, well,
and they're like, this is how our ancestors ate. Like, they know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in Australia at the moment, and when I first got here, it was expressed to me when you're treating a Native Australian patient, that you basically look at their age and you add 20, because that's how fast they age. That's how quickly they break down. And so if you're treating someone who's 40 years old, you treat them as a 60-year-old, because that's the sort of the, obviously, diseases and issues come in sort of peaks at different points in your life. And so they seem to get these things a lot earlier than other people do. And so they're just breaking down. But that's the cohort that is eating Western diet and living, on this, this crap that's harmful to them, and drinking alcohol and smoking, I'm sure, but the main thing is the food. And I remember, learning as a kid that, I remember I just heard it on the news or something like that. It was just like that studies shown that when eating a Western diet, Native Americans were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all these modern diseases. And I remember thinking, like, well, doesn't that mean that the food is causing the disease? Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease, we just get it at a lower rate. And what was a non-Western diet? What are they eating that we're not, and vice versa? And they didn't, they don't tell you at the time, but it was pure high-fat carnivorism. And that's the same, in Australia. That's what they ate. And so I've spoken to anybody whenever I can, that are in the hospital for different issues, and this comes up, especially with the Native population, and we talk about it, and I just say, like, hey, this is where I'm coming from, and like you say, they all goes like, yeah, that's what we all used to eat when I was a kid, and everyone was lean and strong and healthy, and no one had any of these problems. And he's just like, huh. And and there's still people living like that. There's still people living quite naturally, and just eating meat, and kangaroos, same as they always would. I'm sure they're incorporating other things as well. But
good news is, when you're in Australia, kangaroo is cheap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, it's a
Yeah, it's
pest.
not that great
It's
though.
vermin. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, they're a nuisance, so everybody wants them blown away.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I had a hell of a time finding kangaroo meat. Like, I was going to
Sure.
nice steakhouses, and I'm like, "Where's your kangaroo?" And they're like, "Not this kind of place."
No, no.
And so, you go to like more like a Texas Roadhouse sort of
Yeah,
spot,
yeah.
equivalent in Australia, and then that's where you find the kangaroo, and it's not bad.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too is that you can only find certain cuts of the kangaroo. They'll do like the filet mignon, the back straps of the kangaroo, because people are so obsessed with lean meat down here. That was a big thing when I first got down here. It was just lean, lean, lean. Well, because they really took it to heart that fat and cholesterol are bad for you and they cause heart disease. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you do believe the data, and you do believe the recommendations that cholesterols cause heart disease, and this is bad for you. There's no benefit nutritionally. Then yeah, you should cut it out. You should get rid of that crap. And that so as a market and a society, they've really done that pretty well here. The problem is it's dead ass wrong. And so
Yeah.
the kangaroos, they just do the backstraps because they're just totally lean. And they're also, most of these things are pretty lean anyway, because they're just living naturally. They're not being like grain fed or whatever. But apparently the tails have more fat, and that's what the Aboriginals will eat. That's the most prized part. And so they'll take the back straps off. They'll sell it to in the grocery stores, and
The white man, and then they'll sure.
and then
Good
they'll
for
take
them.
and they'll take the tails, and they'll actually just ship them out and just give them to Aboriginal communities, just to have, and then the rest of it they just grind down for dog food. That's how they use kangaroos here. And I've been trying my ass off to get some kangaroo tails, because that's I was talking to some of these guys, and they were like, and they even said, just like we're talking about meat and just eating animals in general, and not eating the other stuff. They said, yeah, and what the most important part is? The fat. He said that to me, and I was like, you're damn right it is. And so he was saying, like, that's why we eat the tails. The tails have the most fat. That's the best part. And after the conversation, he's like, yeah, I'm going to talk to my nephew and have him send me some kangaroo tails. I'm gonna get on this,
Nice.
and so yeah, it's good to see. And you see dramatic differences when people go on a carnivore diet, especially when they have these chronic issues, autoimmune issues, diabetes, certainly. But it is most dramatic in these genetic populations who have not had the exposure to agriculture that that our ancestors would have had, and that's why they're 4 times as likely to get these problems than people of Western descent would be, because we had the agricultural revolution 8 to 10,000 years ago. And so we've had sort of some genetic adaptations and protections against these poisonous sort of foods that they don't have. And so they get much more hit by sort of the toxic elements in these foods. And then you take that away, and it just goes away. Yeah. So I found that that's probably one of the strongest tools in my arsenal as a doctor of getting people better and actually just keeping them better. And that's really what I think is the main thing to do in medicine at all. John, I'm just conscious of the time here. I don't want to take up your whole night.
Yeah, I do need to take off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully,
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk with you. I'm glad we were able to set this up, and I would like to bring you back on some other time and really get into the nitty gritty with your X3 bar and your fitness program, and really and focus on how people can best address optimizing muscle growth and athletic performance as well, which is something you're obviously very well versed on. If you're able to.
Nice. Yeah, I'll absolutely do it. This was good.
Awesome.
Well, now that we figured out a good time that works for both of us.
Yeah.
That's because me being in California, you being in Australia.
Yeah.
It was tough, but we figured it out.
Yeah. So,
and we must thank our friend Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, man. He was like, we really, really wanted us to get together on video. So, and I appreciate his enthusiasm and commitment and persistence.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
he messaged the both of us a lot.
Yeah.
It was funny because like this is like it's a really great conversation. Josh was absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, he worked for it and pushed for it. It's just like, so you get things done. You just keep plugging away. So yeah, thanks,
That's right.
Josh.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. Great. Well,
Special thanks to Josh.
yeah. So what's the best place for people to find you and look at your work and take a look at your
my landing page is drj.com. DOCTOR, the letter J.com. And there's links to everything YouTube. I do the most on Instagram. I'm starting to do some stuff on TikTok, but I really hate the platform.
So do I. Yeah.
You know, it's like, let me educate you in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just kind of ADD video. And really, there's two types of videos that get a lot of traction. It's girls taking their clothes off and like kind of funny stuff like cars, rolling down a hill or, exploding toilets or just weird humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, when you're talking about science, it's weird. Like there are some days where it seems very efficient and there's other days where it's like, wow, like I'm just wasting my time here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do double all of my posts as Instagram stories. So it's getting some value, but it's funny because I'll have 20,000 views on Instagram, yet I have more followers on TikTok and some of my videos get like 200.
Weird.
That's an exaggeration. Probably the lowest one is like 800.
Okay.
But it's like, then you see like the girl who just has like 50 videos of her just like running around in her underwear. And it's just like, like each one is like millions of views. Like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's what this is here for then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I'll put those all in the show notes as well. And I'll try to get this up. Sort of in the next week or so. I know Josh will be. I don't think I could delay it more than that. I think Josh would.
He kills both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he told me, he's just like, as soon as it's out, you've got to send it to me. I really want to see it. And so maybe I'll just screw with him and just say it's coming out in a month or something like that. Just watch the fireworks and then pepper it out as an early birthday present.
Yeah, don't involve me in that.
Yeah.
He'll send me nasty messages.
Yeah, Dr. Jaquish said, he really didn't want this coming out before June, so I'm just honoring.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, John, thanks so much. It's absolutely been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you on again, and we'll talk some more about getting buff.
Awesome, Anthony.
Cool.
Have a good night.
You too.